And so that 200-page autopsy was supposed to explain why the Democrats experienced their worst electoral loss in about 20 years. But what we got was a mess, admittedly. No executive summaries, no sources, no real conclusions. And the DNC chair, he just straight up refused to release it. And after intense pressure and the press getting their hands on it, he was forced to release it. Let's see what he had to say about it. I am not proud of this product. It does not meet my standards, and it won't meet yours. I don't endorse what's in this report or what's left out of it. Now, that's a pretty damning statement for a report from your own organization. And I think the criticism is valid, but is the issue what was in the report or not in the report? Or was the issue how the DNC had handled it? First, let's evaluate the actual report. The Democrats lost the last presidential election. Shocking. Yes, but it happened. And in typical fashion, as political parties tend to do, the DNC formed what I thought would be a commission, but ended up being a single person to investigate why that loss happened. And that's what we typically refer to as a post-election autopsy. The man who wrote this autopsy, Paul Rivera, did it part-time. Apparently he missed like every deadline and didn't even interview like key people who might have some input on exactly what happened. No executive summary, no real conclusion, and no sources backing up the claims in the report. Basically, if you submitted this report to your college professor for an assignment, they would probably slap you. Just an example of how badly this was put together. At one point in the report, he claims that they interviewed 1,200 people. Shortly after making that claim, that number skyrockets to 120,000 people with no indication why. It's crazy. And when the head of the DNC received this report, he basically sat on it. He was interviewed by many people. People were asking for the report. And his only real answer was, it's a distraction. He said that if people got this report, they would focus on things that weren't important, things that wouldn't help us win in the future. He made a point to focus on the many victories Democrats have had since the election. That sounds kind of weird, justifiably to a lot of people. Why commission a report on why we lost and not tell us anything about it? I get that. And that goes to my central claim that this was mishandled, possibly the worst way anyone could handle it. Eventually, as these things tend to happen, the press got a hold of the report. The DNC head went into what I'm assuming is panic mode and released it anyways, with notes, basically telling people that this is crap, it doesn't meet our standards, and it's not something the DNC acknowledges as beneficial due to the many, many, many glaring issues with it. Basically, they went into full PR mode, which if they handled it correctly in the first place, by just saying simply, yo, the report was garbage, but here's what we need to do to make it happen. Basically, they went into full PR mode when all of this could have probably been avoided by just saying up front in the first place that the report was garbage. It was improperly done. We fired the person responsible, but we did learn lessons. The same critics would still have their doubts, would still be making super long think pieces online about how the DNC is bought and paid for by AIPAC or whatever they want to say. But at least when that report gets leaked, as we all knew it would be, you wouldn't look like an idiot. Let's strip away the optics. It would be a distraction. It is a distraction. The party was owed a rigorous, properly sourced autopsy that was released to the public. Transparency builds trust, which is sorely needed in the DNC, clearly. Accountability builds credibility. another thing that's sorely needed. And you can't properly course correct without that trust and credibility accounted for. Releasing a report that poorly done does none of that. What it ends up doing is creating more doubt. Releasing this did exactly what I think they feared would happen. It opens the door to every interpretation, every assumption, every grievance, because what ends up happening is you're handing people an incomplete picture for them to fill up with things that they already believe. Let me share with you a comment that motivated me to make this video. The autopsy proves both parties don't care about the American people. And what evidence did they provide to show this? Palestine wasn't mentioned. Kamala said she'd do what Biden did. Corporate money means more to Democrats than people. But that's not a true critique of this autopsy. It's his personal grievance list with the DNC that has nothing to do with the actual issues with that autopsy. Not a word about the missing sources, not a word about the missing conclusions, not a word about the author working on it part-time and missing all the deadlines. Nothing about the structural issues that make that report extremely unreliable, which tells me his complaint isn't about the autopsy. The complaint is that the conclusions, if you can call them that, didn't already match his preconceived assumptions. And the structural problems are just a convenient wrapper for a predetermined verdict on the DNC. It's essentially validation seeking. And I hate it. Sorry. And since many people on the left believe the biggest issue with this autopsy is a lack of them mentioning Gaza, let's get into it. Among Biden 2020 voters who didn't vote for Harris in 2024, so people who voted for Joe Biden in 2020 but didn't vote for Kamala Harris in 2024, 29% said ending Israel's violence in Gaza was their top issue. This data is referencing a specific subset of voter, the Biden voter who didn't vote for Kamala Harris. It says nothing about Gaza being a significant reason why she lost. And it doesn't account for all the many other factors that happen simultaneously. 1/3 of a specific type of voter, which is, again, just a subset. So a percentage of people who claim Gaza was a significant issue. I need you to sit and really think about that. The economic environment, 3 years of inflation, expensive groceries, expensive rent, high gas prices. These are all factors that heavily weigh against any candidate decades before Gaza was ever even an issue for Americans. Now, here's the thing that really, really, really bothers me, and it goes beyond the reaction to the DNC post-election autopsy. There's a lot of criticism from the left towards the DNC that's rigorous, evidence-based, proportional, and genuinely aimed at making the party better. And that criticism is extremely valuable. It's necessary. And a party that can't criticize itself is a party incapable of learning from its mistakes. But that's sadly not what we're getting a lot of the time online, on social media, on cable news. It's criticism that starts with the conclusion, DNC bad, DNC bought by billionaires, DNC supports genocide. Then it uses whatever information available just to confirm that preconceived conclusion. It's ass backwards, literally. It fills the void with a contrived narrative. instead of figuring out what we need to do as a party, as a country, to fix our problems, we're just online fighting about bullshit. And while we do that, the other guys out here creating slush funds for January 6 rioters and rolling back voting rights and God knows what else. UFC fights at the White House. You cool with that? What I want from Democratic leadership, be honest. Be honest about what you learned. Be honest about what you didn't learn. Don't just release an incomplete, incoherent report and call that transparency. It's stupid. It's not strategic at all. And just don't bury that report and claim that's strategic. And also, this goes for the critics. Don't just bury us with a list of grievances you've been had and call that analysis of a report that doesn't even deserve analysis in the first place. Not doing those things and being transparent, being intellectually honest, leading with facts, being transparent, but also being smart is the difference between a Democratic Party that learns from its mistakes and a party that's just performative while repeating the same mistakes over and over and over again.